the Darwinian idea of life. Darwinism seemed to imply, well, everybody is a competition for survival. That's what the world is. Each organism trying to survive at the expense of the others. So that merges, you see, with the Yashivian philosophy, with the Yashivian philosophy here. It seems to be the totalistic, scientific view of the world. Chapter 30. Again, I understand it, Anna said to herself as soon as the characters started. Yes, what was the last thing I thought of so clearly? She cried, trying to recall. Chutkin, fear. No, that was it. Yes, what Yashin says, the struggle for existence, that's the phrase used for Darwinism at the time. And hatred is the one thing that holds men together. No, it's a useless journey you're making, she said, mentally addressing the party you're coaching for, evidently making an excursion to the country. And the dog you're taking with you will be no help at all. You can't get away from yourselves. Turning her eyes in the direction of Piotr, I turned to look. She saw a workman almost dead drunk. He's found a quicker way, she thought. Count Vronsky and I did not find that happiness either, though we expected so much of it. And now, for the first time, Anna turned that glaring light in which she was seeing everything that is now is the light of Yashivian philosophy. Right? On to the relations with him, which he'd hitherto avoided thinking about. What was it he saw in me? Not love so much as the satisfaction of vanity. She remembered his words, the expression of his face, which he called an abject setter dog in the early days of their love affair. And everything now confirmed this. Now, you know, that much is true about their early days, right, the love affair. But it's certainly not true anymore. Right? Ah, yes. The zest is gone, as the English said. By the way, that phrase is in English in the original. It's one of the phrases that had current phrases, you know, I don't know. What's your current? Kicking the can down the road, or something like that everybody likes to use, right? It's something like that. This is the one from the 1870s from English. The zest is gone, as the English said. That fellow wants everyone to admire him, and he's very much pleased with himself. Yes, there's not the same flavor about me for him now. If I go away, at the bottom of his heart will be glad. And this was not mere supposition. She saw it distinctly in the piercing light which revealed to her now the meaning of life and human relations. She has the philosophy explaining everything. This is again why Anna, you don't think she's going to be a philosophical hero, but she is. My love keeps growing more passionate and selfish, while his is dying, and that's why we're drifting apart, she went on musing. And there's nothing else I can do. He is everything to me, and I want him more and more, to give himself up to me entirely, and he wants more and more to get away from me. We were irresistibly drawn to each other. A little further down. If I could be anything but a mistress, passionately caring for nothing but his desires, what she wants is to, the reason she would get a divorce is that if she gets married, she's nothing but an unromantic figure. A wife with a family. What's romantic about that? Being a mistress that's a much better important romantic state, you see. He wants a family. He wants to get out of the romantic state. She wants to keep it. Don't I know, she says, that he won't desert me, that he's not in love with the Princess Sorokina. But if he stays with me only from duty, that's humiliating and even worse. So, she does know, despite her jealousy, that he isn't in love with somebody else. And this is, again, reality breaking through, which he has to push it away. Next chapter. She's at the railway station. 864. Even the child's hideous and affected, she thought. Avoiding anyone, she got quickly and seated herself at the opposite window of the empty carriage. A deformed peasant covered with dirt and a cap from which his tussle hair stuck out passed by the window. Stooping down to the carriage wheels, there's something familiar about that hideous peasant, thought Anna, and remembering her dream, she moved away to the opposite door, shaking with terror. Everybody she sees now seems to repulsive. A man crosses himself. I wonder what he means by that. He sees this married couple and thinks that they're all filled with hate for each other. Chapter 30. I'm sorry. Page 867 here. The station master coming up asked her where she was going by train. The boy selling cross as a sort of drink took his eyes off her. My God, where am I going, she thought, going further and further along the platform. At the end she stopped. Some ladies and children who had come to meet a gentleman in spectacles paused in their laughter and talking and stared at her as she reached them. She quickened her pace and walked away from them to the edge of the platform. A goods train was coming in. The platform began to sway, and she imagined that she was in the train again. And all at once, she thought of the man crushed by the train the day she first met Morson, and she knew what she had to do. Now, if you're not reading this book carefully, you say, isn't Tolstoy artful? That wonderful foreshadowing at the beginning. Man crushed by the train. Anna, you see? Perfect. Oh, what an artist. And that is not at all what happens here. In that case, you understand, it's the author doing it. The character isn't aware if it's foreshadowing, that's foreshadowing. You know, if there's a storm on the horizon, looking for a future catastrophe, the hero is not seeing that. So the storm doesn't cause the catastrophe, and the hero doesn't see it that way. It belongs to the author if it's foreshadowing. But in this case, it's not the author. It's the character. Tolstoy is not using foreshadowing. It's Anna fulfilling an omen. It belongs to the character. She chooses, not the author. Because she's a fatalist and a romantic and believes in the omen and takes it. You see, it's all the difference in the world here. She knew what she had to do. That is, there was no way out. It's inevitable. With a rapid light step, she went down to the steps that led from the water tank to the rails and stopped close to the approaching train. She looked at the lower part of the tracks, at the bolts and chains, and the tall iron wheels of the first truck slowly moving up and trying to measure the midpoint between the front and the back wheels, and the very moment when that point would be opposite her. She's trying to time her jump. There, she said to herself, looking into the shadow of the truck, at the mixture of sand and coal dust which covered the ties. There, in the very middle, and I shall punish him and escape from everyone and from myself. She wanted to fall halfway between the wheels of the front car, which was drawing level with her. But the red bag, which she began to take from her arm, delayed her, and it was too late. The car had passed. She had to wait for the next one. She's going to jump under a train and she worries about her bag? You see, she's about to jump and she thinks, well, I have to put my bag down. And that takes, so she misses the time. Why in God's name would you care about that? If you're about to die, what sense does that make? You know, for me, it would be taking off my glasses, right? Which I always do, you know, anything that might break them, I take them off, right? And I don't think about it. I don't decide to take them off. It's been a habit that I've done over and over again, thousands of times in my life. And she has done the same thing with that bag. This is the body acting. The body has a mind of its own. This is one of the things Tolstoy is so wonderful about. He knows how the body works and how it interacts with consciousness. Remember that line I told you that one of the other novelists said, everybody knows that if you feel like praying, you will assume a kneeling position. But Count Tolstoy knows that if by chance you assume a kneeling position, you will very well may feel like praying. It goes both ways. Tolstoy knows that the body will act on its own here. That's why she isn't thinking, I'm trying to save the bag. The body is doing it for her. You understand me? A feeling such as she had known when about to take the first plunge in bathing came upon her, and she crossed herself. She's about to jump. Again, the body does something for her. Because she's about to jump, she remembers how she used to jump into the water when bathing. Her body remembers that and signals it to her, right? She assumes the position of jumping, and that is the body now reminding her, okay, the causation doesn't go from the mind having the body expressing the mind, it goes the other way. The body does what it does, and it provokes thoughts in the mind, and she crosses herself, right? And that familiar gesture, it says, brought back into her soul a whole series of memories of her childhood and girlhood, and suddenly the darkness that had covered everything for her was torn apart, and life rose up before her for an instant in all its bright past joys. Because she wants to jump, the body reminds her of something outside the narrative that leads to death. Her childhood, the possibility of other joys. Everything has been left out of the narrative. The counter-evidence that hasn't been completely suppressed. If she only would turn her consciousness to it, she would live. But what do we do when we have a difficult task to perform and a stray thought that we need to attend to occurs to us? We hold the thought at the side of our mind in abeyance, focus on the task to be done, finish the task, and then turn to the thought. But in this case, the task is jumping in front of a train. And so she will only turn back to this when it is too late. But she did not take her eyes off the wheels of the second car. And exactly at the moment when the midpoint between the wheels drew level with her, she threw away the red bag, and drawing her head back into her shoulders, fell on her hands under the car, and with a light movement, as though she would rise immediately, dropped on her knees. Only Tolstoy would think of having her have a light movement, because it's the body again acting the way it was she was diving. Okay, nobody else in the world would have thought of that. So out of harmony with what's going on. And at the instant, she was terror-stricken at what she was doing. Where am I? What am I doing? What for? She tried to get up and throw herself back, but something huge and merciless struck her on the head and dragged her down on her back. Lord, forgive me everything, she said, feeling it impossible to struggle. A peasant muttering something was working above the iron, and the light of the candle by which she had read that book filled with falsehood, troubles, falsehood, sorrow, and evil, flared up more brightly than ever before, lighted up for her all that had been shrouded in darkness, flickered, began to grow dim, and was quenched forever. Now look, it's only after she jumps that she realizes she shouldn't have jumped. The horror, the message that those other memories of her childhood suggest, come back to her when it is too late. Now, if you imagine that consciousness speeds up in your last seconds, Dostoevsky always said it did. You can imagine that she suffers more in this second than she has in the rest of her life. It's absolutely impossible not to pity her here. Nobody deserves that kind of suffering. And of course, no one else would ever be aware of it because it's in your last seconds. Now, I say this to you because if any of you ever think of suicide to escape trouble, you may be provoking more in your last second than you tried to escape. Please keep that in mind. Then there's the image of the candle by which she read the book. I was like, normally that would be a hackneyed image of the book in which she read. But in this case, you understand, Anna has modeled herself on a romantic heroine out of novels. And so the book, actually, the hackneyed image, works see, for that reason. She has the end of the romantic heroine, the end in death. But it's not the romantic death for love. It's the horrible death from the philosophy that love has led to, and the sense of complete isolation when it didn't have to be. It's a really horrible, horrible moment. And again, I think you can't help sympathizing with her at this moment. All right, in part 8, we get the contrasting part, right? This is 11. We're told, by the way, at the beginning of part 8, when Vronsky in his despair goes off to fight the Eastern War that's going on, the very war that was mentioned in Karamazov, in order to kill himself. And leaves his daughter with her legal father, Karenina. Now you have to pity that. First of all, that whole sequence of Anna going to see us, we've watched her over 30 pages. We've traced her from, one thing about tracing a person's thoughts bit by bit is you also know that she hasn't thought of it. She hasn't once thought of her daughter. She has thought of Sergei 3 times, I counted, but she hasn't once thought of her daughter. And there's something horrible about that absence. Yeah. And Vronsky now lets the daughter go to Karenin so he can die. This girl is an orphan not because of the choice of both of her parents. Neither one found her important enough to put aside their own misery. And imagine giving the girl to the now totally crazed Karenin and the Countess Lydia Ivanovna. God help her. And it didn't have to be her. But both of her parents, who by the romantic, in this case, would be for death, ran there. Abandoned children plays a role in this class as well. Okay, Levin in part 8 is tortured. He's tortured by 2 sequences of thoughts that really disturb him. One of them is, since the death of his brother, the thought of the way in which death makes nonsense of all human achievement has come to him with an irresistible force. There's a big difference between knowing that you are going to die in the abstract and actually knowing you are going to die. Right? It's all the difference in the world when it comes home to you. At your age, it's probably, oh well, someday, fun. Right? I mean, that Professor Morson probably has to worry about. I don't have to. There's all the difference in the world between people of my age are just as good at avoiding falling death as people of our age. That's a secret. It comes home to him. If we're going to die, what is the meaning? And he can't find it. And the other thing that comes, that problem that he feels impossible to resolve, is a contradiction in him. The same sort of contradiction he saw in his friend Sviazhsky, remember, who has professes one set of beliefs and lives in a different way. And in his case, it is, he believes he's accepted the teachings of natural science, and from that, he's concluded, adopted a materialist worldview, and doesn't believe in God. And yet, when Kitty was in labor, and he was incredibly distressed, and he felt himself lifted out of the normal world of experience, just the way he had with his brother, but in the opposite direction. Openings into the sublime, which he had never guessed, and found himself praying for her. the atheist finds himself praying. And now, he doesn't know what to do with that. You see, he can't decide, well, because I was praying, I must believe in God, therefore I'm going to church. That would be false. So many things he also believes. But he can't just say, oh, it was just a moment of weakness, because it was a sublime moment. It's too valuable just to write off. He's torn. He's most torn. Now, you understand by the first question, if you start on page 888. Ever since his beloved brother's deathbed, Lebanon first glanced at the questions of life and death in the light of these new convictions, scientific convictions, which during the period of his 20s to his 34th year imperceptibly placed his childhood and youthful beliefs. He'd been stricken with horror, not so much of death as of life, without any knowledge of whence and why and how and what it is. The organism, its decay, the indestructibility of matter, the law of conservation of energy, evolution, were the words that usurped the place of his old belief. These words and the ideas associated with them were very useful for intellectual purposes, but for life they yielded nothing. And Levin felt suddenly like a man who has changed his warm fur cloak for a muslin garment, and going for the first time into the frost is immediately convinced, not by reason, but by his whole nature, that he is as good as naked and he must inevitably perish. If you were looking for meaning, there is simply no way you can find it in science. And it doesn't matter what the science may have discovered. Drop my pen where I did before. Before you're going to answer, okay, it falls at 9.8 meters per second. Is that good or evil? Makes no sense. And now you can say, what's the meaning of that? It doesn't have a meaning. It falls at 9.8 meters per second squared. That's it. There is no meaning in any natural process. Now you can say, well, evolution designed us to find meaning, but that doesn't mean there is meaning. It just means that, for survival's sake, we were built to find it. And if we've been, built to believe that the moon was made of green cheese, we believe that too. It doesn't give you anything. The fact that it's caused. So what does he do? He realized that other people will simply manage to live to avoid the question. Until, at some point, it ambushes them later in life and they're absolutely horrified. But he's not willing to do that. And he remembers how he prayed his wife's confinement. That puzzles him. And he tries to read philosophers, but that doesn't seem to do any good. And if you turn to page 891, he sums up the problem. Without knowing what I am and why I am here, life's impossible. And that I can't know, and so I can't live, Levin said to himself. In infinite time, in infinite matter, in infinite space, is formed a bubble organism, and that bubble lasts a while and bursts. And that bubble is I. You can see, no matter what we ever learn about scientific processes, the description of your life remains exactly like this. You weren't there, and then you, an organism, come to be, and you last for a while, and you die, and that's it. That problem will not change, no matter what our advances are in physics, chemistry, or biology, right? It's going to be some version of it. And it's perfectly clear that more science, therefore, cannot give him any answer. But Tolstoy says it was an agonizing fallacy, that there is no meaning. But it was a sole logical result of ages of human thought in that direction. But the problem is thinking in that direction. This was the ultimate belief on which all the systems elaborated by human thought and almost all the ramifications rested. It was a prevalent conviction in all the other explanations that other people, seem to profess. In the next chapter, well, it goes on and says, he must escape from, it was not really a fallacy, it was the cruel jest of some wicked power, some evil, hateful power. He must escape. And the means of escape every man had in his own hands. He had to cut short this dependence on evil. And there was one means, death. And Levin, a happy father and husband, in perfect health, was several times so near suicide that he hit a rope so that he might not be tempted to hang himself, and was afraid to go out with his gun for fear of shooting himself. By the way, in Tolstoy's own confession, he went through a crisis, he used the same words here. But Levin did not shoot himself, did not hang himself, he went on living. And the next chapter says something odd. You see, when he asked questions, theoretical questions, he was reduced to despair. But when he was doing his daily chores, doing his daily life, he did them very well. And he noticed something. Whenever in his life he had taken up a project based on some theory or philosophy that it ought to be done, he would do it for a while, and then it would sort of fade away to nothing. It runs to counter the elementary force. You can't. If a project depends upon enthusiasm, it's hopeless, because you can't keep up enthusiasm forever. Right? It has to be fed by something else. But he found out that there's another kind of work that didn't have that result, that he always did and knew he had to do. And Tolstoy describes, or Levin describes that as the work that he felt was incontestably necessary. You can't not do it. To be able to bring up his children, that was incontestably necessary. To take care of his sister's portion of the estate, that was incontestably necessary. All these things, you could not, it was impossible not to do it. And it says, as impossible as to fling down a child one is holding in his arms. What's the theory that tells you, don't fling down a child that you're holding in your arms? And the wrong way to think is, well, let's see, what is the theory? Is it Kantian? If you need a theory, you're in real trouble. And listen, you can certainly formulate a theory that says you should vote. You can, philosophers and social scientists have formulated a theory to defend every conceivable position in the world. If you need a theory not to fling down a baby, there's something really wrong. You know certain things much more incontestably than any theory could provide. Aristotle gave us the example of this. We all know that chicken is good to eat. And we can come up with theories, but we know those theories less certainly than we know the basic fact. That's the opposite of morals in mathematics, right? In mathematics, what you know most certainly is the axioms. And the more you reason, the more doubt possible is when you make a mistake. But in moral matters, it's the opposite. The theories that you derive, they are much less certain than the basic fact you know, than the basic fact that you don't throw down a baby in your arms. So he keeps doing this work. Then you get this section here, the bottom of 893. He also knew how to do his work. He knew that he must hire laborers as cheaply as possible, but to have men in bond, paying them in advance less than the current rate of wages, was what he must not do, even though it was profitable. Selling straw to the peasant in time of scarcity is what he might do, even though he felt sorry for them, but the tavern and the inn must be ignored, though they were a source of income, and so on and so on. He knows all these particular things. This is the moral thing to do, this is not the moral thing to do, and if you're not reading carefully, you will say, if you're of the wrong sort of mind, you will say, I wonder what the theory is behind all these particular examples. And then you've gotten it wrong. There is no theory. He knows this more important, better than he could know any theory. You cannot think of morality as a matter of reasoning down from a set of axioms like mathematics. If you did that, if it was possible to reason that way, we could assign our moral decisions to some computer. You wouldn't need any human experience at all. But look, morality doesn't work that way. The way you become a moral person is by really, really understanding particular cases. in all their ramifications. And you develop a kind of wisdom based on reflecting on mistakes you and other people have made, particular cases. What else should I have seen? And you arrive at what you might call theoretical propositions, but they come from the bottom up, and they're only tentative. They're rules of thumb. That's the tradition from the bottom up that Tolstoy said. You become much better reasoner if you think in terms of cases. This is why Aristotle says young people can be very good mathematicians, but they can't be very good at ethics. Sorry to tell you that. Because you haven't had time to explore enough cases. Of course, old people may have had all the time in the world and not used it that way. That doesn't guarantee anything. But you know, always think of what it looked like from the other person's perspective. How did it turn out? Why did I not get it wrong? If you keep doing that, that will develop a moral sensitivity to you. Here, let me see if I can get this to you in a different way. Imagine that you were going to die very quickly, and you had an infant child. And there were two people you could leave the child to raise her. And one of them was a good, caring, empathetic, responsible person who had the wrong philosophy and the wrong politics. And the other shared all your philosophical, political convictions, but was not a bad guy, but not remotely as good as the other one. Who would you leave it to? Well, if you think you would leave it to the person with the right politics, you're crazy. You don't know what that child is going to be. You don't know what sort of person she is going to be. You need somebody who can respond to that particular person and what her needs are, which cannot be foreseen in advance. You need someone with ethical insight and flexibility. If you care about the child, that's the person you pick. If you care about theory, you pick the other one. Well, Levin, therefore, knows how to make moral decisions better than he ever did before, without a theory. And yet he is tortured by this idea that he does not have the theory of the meaning of life. And he's still on the verge of suicide. And then, something happens. He's watching in the barn, watching some threshing going on, and thinking, why are these people doing it? They'll be dead before they know it. I'll be dead before I know it. But meanwhile, he's still timing the threshing, to make sure it goes right. And he winds up talking to this one peasant and says, well, why don't you rent a particular piece of land? You can work it and make some money on it. And he says, no. He says, I couldn't make any money on it. Well, Levin says, but that other guy makes money on a similar piece of land. He says, yeah, he does, because he will squeeze the soul out of a person, squeeze every last kopeck and bit of labor out of a person, and he doesn't give a damn about what they suffer. But I'm not going to do that. You know, he's living for his own belly. I think we ought to live for your soul, for God. And then suddenly has an answer. This gives him an answer. Now, if you're not reading this book carefully, pick up the critics, you'll find there are a lot of them. They will say, Tolstoy thinks that all wisdom lies in simple people. Just go out and listen to a peasant. If that's what all Tolstoy had to say, he wouldn't be Tolstoy. He'd be writing for Time magazine. No, it's not the answer. It's the catalyst. Or as Tolstoy says, an electric shock. He understands suddenly something. All of us have a sense of right and wrong that some things are to be done and some things are not. We all describe it usually. But we all have it. Where could you have gotten it from? I'm going to say you can't get it from science. If you traced its causes, the cause that you believe something is good doesn't at all tell you that it is good. And if you're good because of the effects, you're not being good. You're just being, betting on a good way of making a good investment. The sense of right and wrong is, as Lenin says, is given. You already have it. You don't reason yourself into it. And then, once he has this, he has the sense that I look for miracles. And yet, the sense of life was always there. He had been living rightly, but thinking wrongly. Theory had concealed the answer, but the answer was in his good life. I looked for miracles and it was right in front of my eyes, he says. It was always there. This is another one of the open camouflage. You have to see it's right in front of your eyes. The sense that life has a meaning if you live it right moment to moment. If somebody then asked you, well, what is this meaning? You couldn't tell them. You couldn't tell them because the meaning is not a proposition. This is why people who have been struggling to find the meaning of life and seem to have found it can't tell you why. It is found not in an answer, but in the vanishing of the question. And that will happen if you are living right. If you do your moment, it won't happen by theory. If it were a theory, it was a proposition, you would all already know it. But if you live right, Dostoevsky gives you caring for others. Tolstoy is giving you, again, the attention to the moment-by-moment process, doing what is incontestably necessary. Caring. If you do that, you will sense the meaning without being able to put a name to it, to explain it. And if you don't do it, you will feel ambushed at some point by the sense that everything you did was as pointless as the last meal you ate that's already indigested and leaves no trace. It's a choice that you've got. And it's not a choice about a big decision, but about how you live your life, how you look at other people, moment by moment, in the tiny alterations of life. And it's always, always in your power. Thank you.